Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today for our collaborative circle. These talks are going to occur monthly, and they'll be hosted by the Long Island Collaborative Divorce Professionals. The Long Island Collaborative Divorce Professionals is a group of interdisciplinary professionals, all dedicated to assisting you and your family in resolving conflict with dignity, with confidentiality, and without ever going to court. My name is Liz Vaz. I'm a divorce attorney focusing on mediation and collaborative divorce. I'm the founder of this group, and I'm honored today to be joined by three of my esteemed colleagues: Catherine Canaday, also a collaborative divorce attorney and mediator; Bob Raymond, psychologist and family support specialist; and Steve Linker, a CPA, forensic accountant, and financial neutral. Each of them are dedicated members of the LICDP. They are trained in mediation and in the collaborative process, and they're all committed to helping Long Island families find a better path forward. For more information about any of our panelists today, as well as any other members of the LICDP, please feel free to check out our website at licdp.com. What we're going to do here today is start off each circle with a topic that's either a current event or an item of a particular interest to help us better understand the divorce process. But more importantly, to find alternative ways to settle any family disputes. Right now, it's June of 2020, and since we're celebrating Pride Month, we thought that we might focus on one divorce of an LGBTQ couple and discuss a little about the history of their divorce, but mainly focus on how choosing the collaborative divorce method might have brought about different results for that family. Today, we're going to talk about Melissa Etheridge and Tammy Lynn Michaels. Melissa Etheridge is an Oscar-winning singer and songwriter. Tammy Lynn Michaels is an actress. And this couple had a commitment ceremony in 2003 in California, and then in 2010, they filed for divorce. In the court filings to dissolve their partnership, Etheridge asked for custody of the children, and she asked for the court to provide no financial support to Michaels. Michaels later said that she felt blindsided by this because she found out about the filing through the media. Then Michaels went and filed for her own custody petition as well as spousal support. The court battle went on for 2 years, with each of them making allegations back and forth about bad mothering. It ended up that the couple shared custody of the children, and they finally reached a financial settlement. And how do we know all this? Because all of this is public record. People find out from court records, from the media, and from the internet. And so in the bigger scheme of things, why is all of this relevant? Because this is their private life, and now their private life is in the public forum. And as an attorney, confidentiality is very important to me, and it's a very important element of the family court. So it's not just about this family and about the relationship between the attorney and the client, but in the bigger scheme of things, in the bigger picture, how does confidentiality and privacy play into these family matters? So Catherine, I'd love to hear your thoughts on confidentiality and divorce, and especially as it relates to LGBTQ families.
Thanks, Liz. I think for our families, confidentiality is even more important than perhaps traditional families. Our families are sometimes made up of a number of different people, not just two members of a family. Sometimes we have even three members of a couple. And I think for our families, the confidentiality, the fact that their proceedings are taking place in a conference room, not a courtroom, or now by Zoom, would be very, very beneficial. And I think another aspect of the collaborative process that would have been helpful in this situation is the couple there was being blindsided and doing things through attorneys, and they weren't able to talk together and proceed by agreement the way they would be in the collaborative process. You know, in the collaborative process, people are working together to make decisions jointly for the best interests of the children, and it didn't sound like that was happening there in that litigation process. Another element I think would be really helpful for our families in choosing the collaborative process is when you're deciding how to manage assets and debt. You know, in the court, they're really going to look at just the marital period, which is going back to the date of the marriage, up to the date that they file for papers or they start the collaborative process. Whereas they start the court process, but in the collaborative process, they can go back to when they first formed their economic partnership, all the way up to the date of the agreed either date of separation or the date they file their papers. And for many of our families, we've been together many, many years, sometimes even 20 and more years, but have only been married for 3 or 4 years. So it would be very unfair to our families if you just went from the date of the marriage and considered that the marital period. So I think that's a tremendous benefit to our families as well. And and the last thing I just want to say on this is that, because we have an interdisciplinary team and we have people like Bob on the team, when those emotions run so high, which clearly they were running very high in the case of Melissa and Tammy Lynn, they would have that family support specialist there to help to do coaching and to keep speaking up on behalf of the children, which is so important. So Bob, what are your thoughts on family support specialists and their role in the collaborative process?
So thank you very much, Catherine. Some say that marriage is about love and divorce is about money. And while those two aspects are there, there's a much more important factor that needs to be recognized and respected, and that has to do with emotions and feelings. Because when it comes to divorce, it's an emotional process. Most of the decisions that are made regarding settlement are based on emotional factors. The emotions, as most of us know, can range from being angry and hurt and resentful, feeling terribly frightened, anxiety, depression. One member of the couple may be frozen because of the trauma of the divorce hitting them, and another member of the couple may be kind of on a fast track to get this done with quickly. So all of that needs to be taken into account as the discussions progress. And the family support specialist's role is to be there to help identify the feelings that are occurring and see how they're impacting the relationship so that everybody becomes aware of what's going on emotionally to the participants. And then another reason that emotions are critically important, and the family specialist identifies this, is because decisions that are made, for example, one person may say, I want a house, or another person may say, I want custody of the children. They may say that for emotional reasons. Why do they want the house? Is there a fear that they won't be able to afford living anyplace else? They want custody of the children because they're afraid they're going to lose the children, or they have feelings about the other person that they don't think that other person's going to be a good parent. And things like that have to be taken into consideration, because the way somebody acted, even in the marriage or in the context of the relationship, may not be the way they act when the couple gets separated and divorced. So those kinds of issues need to be looked into, and the family specialist generally does that. What does the family specialist do? It interviews each client to begin the process, to make sure that each member of the couple is prepared to agree to participate in good faith, is prepared to be transparent in the way they present their investments, assets. Particularly, I mean, with Melissa and Tammy, you can imagine there were probably an unequal division of equity and of finances. So there has to be a commitment to acknowledge what the reality is. Some couples are not able to do that, and those couples may not be suited for the collaborative process. So the family specialist usually interviews the couples first, gives feedback on the interview to the attorneys who are involved so that they know what's going on, and uses that in moving forward. There's another role for the children to assess the children in the couple, a child specialist may be involved. Particularly, I think in this case, there were adolescents involved. So there may be reason for someone, and that's somebody who's usually trained to work with children and adolescents, to understand what they are feeling, how they're experiencing the separation and divorce process, what they've been told about the process, and that helps the couple in how they go about handling the divorce, and even helps them develop the parenting plan, which the family specialist is usually very intimately involved in assisting in doing. Family specialist attends all the meetings. Family specialist encourages pre-meetings of the professional team, post-meetings of the professional team to process what has gone on. The family specialist will contact each member of the couple before each meeting, after each meeting. The family specialist is truly the glue that keeps the process moving.
Can I interject, Bob, and ask you something? Hearing you speak about how important it is, right, to have a family support specialist, sometimes to hear the voice of the children. Do you find that that's more important with, say, LGBTQ families than traditional family divorces?
I think it's critically important with LGBT children. There are so many mixed messages. There are so many issues that arise that it really is essential to at least introduce that as a possibility for interviewing the kids.
And I was thinking there's another instance where the family support specialist can be very helpful. You know, many times there's the emotion of guilt is involved in divorce in general. And in some of our families, people have been with one gender and then they're now with a different gender. And I think there's lots of complicated feelings there around that, which is specific in our community. And our children have to adjust then to having parents of a different gender now, whether because their parents are trans and they're becoming a different gender, or because their parents were in a romantic relationship with one gender and now it's in another.
Right, and I'm glad you're bringing that up, because in the collaborative process, the professional members of the team are able to reach out to other professionals who are ancillary to the case. For example, if the kids have a therapist, as opposed to litigation, where if there's going to be input from a mental health person, it's usually done as a forensic is done, and a whole complicated and expensive and a prolonged process occurs, where in the process of collaborative divorce, we can just get the permission of the couple to speak to the professional who's involved, make the phone call, and learn what are the issues, what should we be sensitive to, what should we take into account. The family specialist, along with everybody else on the team, really helps the couple and everyone else think, and I'm going to use the term, thinks inside the box. And what I mean by that is that all of us have so much brain power, whether it's conscious or whether it's not quite deliberate but unconscious. If we just go into ourselves, if we just take a minute to breathe and to sit still and say, let's see what we can come up with regarding the interests and the goals of each member of the couple, how can we come up with the best possible solution to how to help this couple dissolve? We work together as a team, and the process really can be very, very effective.
And I think that brainstorming that you're talking about, that brainstorming process, allows everyone's voice to be heard. I mean, you're sitting in a room together or remotely, and everyone can hear each other and see each other. It's not going through attorneys, where attorneys are speaking what they think perhaps might be best for the family, but actually the couple can speak up themselves and hear and look at the other person. I think that's critically important.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
So while I've emphasized the emotions, it's also the case that the concrete aspect of the finances really need to be taken into account. So let me ask you, Steve, if you can speak to that.
Sure, Bob, thanks. When you talk about the concrete aspect of the finances, it's just amazing how forensic accountants, such as myself, some financial neutrals in the collaborative process are CPAs and some are not. And the interesting distinction that needs to be made right at the outset is different financial neutrals have different talents. Some financial neutrals are adept at business appraisal, and other financial neutrals have an in-depth knowledge of securities and other investments. So it's important that the attorneys in the collaborative process put their heads together and determine, as early as possible, what are the needs of the particular case. And very often, they don't know what the needs are of the financial aspect of the needs are in a particular case. So they would even call upon one or more of us, the CPAs or other financial neutrals, to discuss the fact pattern and see who is best suited for this particular case. So it's very interesting that the financial community, the neutral collaborative community, are very cooperative and collegial with one another, and we will always back one another rather than take a case from somebody if we think that, gee, your talents will lend themselves better to this particular case. And so we do that more often than not. We'll put our heads together and determine what's best for the collaborative process. And of course, the collaborative process is a great process. I mean, I've dealt with over 30 plus years. I've been dealing in divorce litigation and collaborative divorce and divorce mediation, and it's just very interesting. Collaborative divorce in my firm has just started, I guess, about 10 years ago. And I've been doing the others for many more. But it's so much more. It's actually more enjoyable to engage in the collaborative process because we can establish win-win scenarios in the proposed outcomes that are going to be more palatable to the parties because, number one, they have committed themselves to being as amicable as possible, and the lawyers are, of course, also committed to bringing that process to as quick an end as possible. So our role as financial neutrals is to discover and prove and report on the financial facts of the case. Interestingly enough, we become quasi-psychologists during the process because sometimes even in collaborative divorce, we don't always get all of the truths about various assets and income. So we have to read body language and make inquiries of the parties and come up with the total, let's just call it the marital estate, okay? Very often, even if something is not disclosed to us, we will get clues from looking at the tax returns or the other financial affidavits and things like that. So it's really very interesting.
Steve, can I just ask you then,
Sure.
speaking to that, when you're talking about disclosure, right, and you can find hints and clues, it was interesting what Bob was saying about really eliciting people's interests and their emotions, right, and really what is it that you want your future to look like? Do you find that it's easier to get them to be honest, to come to the table and give you those answers and really disclose what it is that they need to disclose in the collaborative process without you having to go and find something?
The greatness of the collaborative process to me is that they come to the table more open than in the litigation process, and oddly enough, even in the mediation process, I've had to quote pull more teeth in mediation than I've had to in collaborative for some reason. One reason I'm pretty sure of is that in collaborative, each party has an advocate. Okay, there's a lawyer for each party, and so in the mediation process, you have one mediator who is typically highly professional and can steer the parties to the right conclusion, to the accurate and correct conclusions. But in collaborative, when you have an advocate for each party, the information just comes out more readily. I've had collaborative cases where that was not the case, and so we just interview the parties and we get to the bottom of things. But it really is it lends itself very well to amassing the assets and liabilities, if you will, of the marital estate more easily than in litigation and mediation. Just a word about the litigation, just a word about the economics of the collaborative process. Litigation could take many months or years to develop the scenarios that very often I have developed in a matter of days or weeks in the collaborative process. It's just the experience of hundreds of cases. And even in mediation, again, because of the advocacy that is contained in collaborative, it's just easier. And yeah.
If I could just interject, there's no way of underestimating the power of support. When people feel supported, they're able to take part in the process in a way that is really effective for them and for the process. So in this approach, each member of the couple has their attorney who's working right besides them. They even have the attorney on the other side working together with them, because it's not adversarial, it's non-adversarial. They've got the family specialist, they've got the financial specialist. So there's a tremendous feeling of support. And I mean, we all should know that in life, it's so important to have that support, especially at times that are stressful.
It is true.
And I think on that point as well, what Steve is talking about, maybe the information comes out more readily. I think it's because you have that advocate who can talk privately to the person and explain to them what is really needed here, and that we're not in court. We can't compel you to do it. However, the spirit of the collaborative process is cooperation, is transparency, is full disclosure. Remind them that that's why they came into the process. They want to honor the relationship. They want to not destroy the co-parenting relationship. All these positive points and why they came in. Sometimes they need a reminder, and sometimes we as the advocate can do that and remind them of the goals and what they came in looking to achieve, and hoping we get them back on track.
Yes, and when we do discover something that maybe they didn't want us to discover, it gets resolved. The jig is up. We just have to settle this thing and get on with our lives. That's just the way it occurs. Yeah.
But if you did discover something that they didn't disclose initially, there wouldn't be some type of shame or some type of, sanction by the court. Really, it would, again, we're not inside the court system, right? The beauty of it is that it would be, oh, here's something that was discovered. It's not necessarily that it's going to go to one spouse or the other, but it's discovered. Now, what do we do with it? And that's when we work within a team to determine what gets done with it.
Sure. Yeah.
And when one person feels maybe less financially savvy or less financially comfortable, the financial specialist is able to give that additional support to that one person. We often have that situation. One person wasn't handling the money. One person wasn't the decision maker. And so they really need to be brought up to speed. And perhaps the other person already feels quite comfortable. So maybe that person needs less support. And to bring the other person, they may need the additional support. And that's what the financial specialist can give them as well.
I just have to say, I've actually seen in the collaborative process, the spouses, if you will, the parties, working together more to get this thing done. It just works better. It's amazing. Yeah.
So Steve, do you find that you have to educate the clients a lot, as Catherine was talking about, right? You're going to have one very financially savvy spouse and one who's maybe not as savvy. Then do you find that you have to do a lot of educating about budgets, about investments, future income, those kind of things?
Okay, well, that's a great question. I have been court appointed in divorce litigation cases, and of course, I'm the neutral expert in a mediation venue. Okay, so as the neutral expert in litigation, or the financial neutral in collaborative, or the neutral expert in mediation, that part is the same. There is an education process that will occur to even the person who is knowledgeable as well as the person who's not knowledgeable, because even the knowledgeable person needs to be aware of some of the nuances that we're striving for in the divorce process to make it happen, to steer them to a conclusion, to a settlement. So yes, there is an education that occurs. Yes. And sometimes people don't realize that the concept in the equitable distribution process is the concept of fair market value. What are the assets? What could you sell the assets for, hypothetically speaking, to somebody? They think that they've got you know, a business that they invested $100,000 in 10 years ago, and they don't realize that that business could be worth $1 million, $2 million, who knows how much right now. And sometimes they're very upset about that, but they realize that because the spouses have been involved in this economic partnership for all these years, that they have to understand it's fair market value. It's what would a hypothetical buyer pay to a hypothetical seller, where everybody knows all the facts, the relevant facts, and nobody's compelled to buy or sell. That's the concept of fair market value. Yeah.
So I was thinking that maybe what we could do is end on one thought that we have as professionals, right? An attorney, a family support specialist, and a financial specialist, regarding our one takeaway. That's the best thing that we think collaborative offers to couples. And being a litigator, my number one is always staying outside of court. The courthouse is the place for families. It really is destructive. It consumes so much of your time and your emotional energy and your finances. And my number one tip is stay away from court. What do you think yours would be, Catherine?
I think that for these families, you know, to help them remember you're going to be parents forever. And so if you can get through this process, maybe not always amicably, but cooperatively, so that when you look back on your divorce story or your separation story, it's something that you feel good about, that you got through it the best way you could, and you really put your children's interests, you know, above your own. I think that the collaborative process offers our families the ability to do that. And if they want to join in the collaborative process, you know, we would always be happy to give them a lot more information. This is just a little bit of information today.
What about you, Steve? What are your last thoughts?
Yes, the collaborative process permits the acceptance of true win-win calculations for spousal support. When we have done everything that we need to do and present what we consider win-win, it's easier for them to digest it in the collaborative process, because they know that we've done everything we could to make sure that we've taken into account the family lifestyle during the marriage and the financial limitations as they exist today. And so we mix the two together, and all the other factors, certainly taking into account the lifestyle that they've been accustomed to and the lifestyle that they're going to need and the financial limitations. It just seems to all better be accomplished under the collaborative process.
And Bob, what are your thoughts?
So I'll say a quick, I see it as the collaborative process as a pathway to the future. No matter what occurred during the marriage, no matter what led up to the divorce, no matter what the feelings were of disappointment, of hurt, of shame, going forward, you want to go forward in the best possible way for yourself, for your children, hopefully for your partner as well, and getting the best, 5 or 6 minds together, crafting the agreement among yourselves rather than leaving it to an unknown stranger. It's the best pathway to a successful future.
I agree. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming and watching, and thank you so much to our panelists, right? We have the absolute best community, right? I say it all the time. I'm one of the biggest cheerleaders for collaborative divorce, and I am surrounded by some of the best people in the industry, 3 of them right here. And our goal is always to help families find better paths forward. And the beauty of it is that we're always learning from each other, right? Nobody has all of the answers. So as a team, we can come up with the best answers for individual families, where if you were in a court system, again, you're going to be before one judge who's going to make a determination on a family he's never met, he doesn't know, and he won't see tomorrow, right? So you coming together with this team of professionals really would benefit your family tremendously if you're thinking about divorce or separation. So we encourage you highly just to find out more information. So again, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you so much to the panelists. If anybody wants more information about the collaborative process, about our group in particular, again, we are the Long Island Collaborative Divorce Professionals. Our website is www.licdp.com, and we welcome all of your feedback, so please reach out to us. Thank you.